Jason Howe, who leads our bulk service offering, is going to be our featured guest. But before we get to Jason, Becky Collar, who's part of our corporate recruiting team, is here to talk about some roles that are open for drivers, and we're just trying to stimulate interest. So, Becky's going to talk about that in just a minute when I turn it over to her. But I do want to start with this because it's kind of where we closed out last month. It's open enrollment, right? And so we are in the midst of our benefits 2022 open enrollment period. It ends next week, Tuesday, on November the 23rd. So counting this evening into next Tuesday, you have 6 days left. If you plan on using our benefits for 2022, get in there and enroll. So I'll send that reminder on the front end. I'll do it as we close up shop tonight, but that's what I wanted to start with before we get to Becky. All right, so with that, Becky, you are here to talk about some driver instructor opportunities, I think some OSR opportunities as well. Without trying to put words in your mouth, I'm just going to let you explain what we're looking for and what locations in the country.
Okay, great. So yes, we have openings all over the country for what we call our driver instructor and driver trainer roles. I know sometimes they use the term OSR, yep. But they are driver instructors that are in the classroom, and they're actually teaching our courses. They're teaching our new drivers and various other courses that we offer. And then we also have those driver trainer positions where you're actually out typically working with maybe one-on-one with those drivers that need some extra assistance. Maybe you're helping with some of our summer, winter type training, and you really get the opportunity to work really closely with our drivers and really make an impact on the company. You know, you're focused on safety, making sure that all of our processes and procedures are being met, making sure our drivers understand our regulatory rules, hours of service, and anything else you can do to really make an impact for them. Like I said, openings all over the country, so we have anything you can think of. We've got Texas, we've got all of our operating centers really have all of those openings. Couple things to think about. We have great benefits to offer with this position. You do get the full office benefits, a lot of time at home, so probably something a little different than being out on the road. You're typically at home daily, or you have a certain type of schedule that offers more time at home. It's a salaried position, so you are considered in a leadership role and are offered salary. And then just, again, really just some great opportunities to work with our drivers and really make an impact on the organization.
Yeah, so a couple of things I'll add there. These openings are predominantly driven by the what we call CAT training, which is CDL apprenticeship training, and I know we get questions on that on a monthly basis. And so as a result of us moving into that type of inexperienced driver hire, it drives the need for the particular openings that Becky is talking about. So certainly if you have interest in these kinds of roles, you can contact Becky directly, because she is sourcing those roles on behalf of corporate recruiting. So give it some thought. It is likely that we can probably meet your geographic needs as well, because it really is kind of across the country. And so when we talk about a salaried position, technically it's more of a daily rate, right? You get paid on a daily basis for coming in and performing that particular work. So really a neat opportunity. I would certainly encourage you to explore that if you have any interest in, looking at a bit of a different lifestyle versus what you might be doing currently. So absolutely. Anything else?
No, just like you said, certainly feel free to contact me, Becky Collar. Otherwise, go to Driver Compass. You can go under resources, internal jobs. And then if you click in the EBS, you will see that there's an apply for office shop warehouse, and all of our positions are out there. So you can look by location, you can look by title. But if you have any questions, either reach out to me or even your driver training leader. They have a lot of that information as well. So we'll get you in the right direction.
Awesome.
All right.
All right. Thanks for being with us.
Yes, happy to be here.
Okay. Have a nice night.
Yes, thank you.
And as you move out, Jason's going to move in.
All right. We'll let him in here.
All right. See you back.
Thank you.
All right,
Hello, Todd.
Mr. Howe, how are you?
Excellent. Thanks for the opportunity. Glad to be here.
Yeah, awesome. So we look forward to your annual visit, right? So we can get an update on kind of what's going on in the bulk world. So by way of introduction, so if folks don't know Jason, he has led our bulk service offering now for just about 4 years. He will celebrate his 20th anniversary with the company in just a couple of weeks, December 3rd, I think, right?
Yeah.
So congratulations in advance, because I think you're going to be here in a couple of weeks, right?
Planning on.
Yeah, so we will say congratulations to you in advance for that, and has a variety of a background with the organization. Started in our maintenance organization, has spent time in our van business on the kind of sales and customer facing side of what we do before getting involved in bulk, which is a bit of a shock to the system because, you know, for those of us that are accustomed to kind of the dry van or the intermodal side of the business, bulk introduces a whole host of new kind of opportunities to learn stuff.
That's right. Yeah.
So thank you for your leadership with bulk. And why don't we start, before we start with the questions, maybe just give a high-level overview of what you're excited about in the bulk business and what's going on in your world.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Todd. And again, thanks for the opportunity. So yes, bulk's just a lot of fun. You know, bulk certainly is more complex than our van business. And I say that not to as a knock on the van business, but I think folks know, hey, there's just a lot of other things that go into even hauling one load. And sometimes I draw the comparison to say, in a van load, and this is really simple, but to say, hey, if I know the origin and destination and the weight and maybe a few other things, I can make that run. You know, with a bulk load, I might have to ask, hey, what am I hauling? What kind of tank do I need? What type of, is there any prior product restriction? Do I need hose? Am I going to use my pump or compressor? And you got to ask a lot of those things. What's the PPE that's required? So the complexity that goes into it can seem significant, but as wouldn't surprise you, our team here, our broad team, we got it down. And so we make the complex simple, and we're able to execute really well. What I'm excited about mostly in our bulk business is how we've grown that business and grown in different areas. And I'll give a couple examples. So I like to say that our bulk business is really three businesses in one. We've got a traditional network truck business, random network. We have a growing dedicated segment in a number of different areas, and we have a bulk intermodal product. So you think of the Schneider portfolio, we've got it all within bulk. We have and really focus probably on our dedicated growth in particular. When we think about that business, we might have said previously that there's commodities we couldn't haul or things we couldn't do in the network segment. But when we put it in the dedicated segment, I can create the right training, I can reduce risk, I can get the right equipment. We can do a lot of different things to include, for example, when I took the role a number of years ago, we didn't do anything on the food grade side. That's been one of the fastest growing segments for us in the dedicated space. So that's exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, a couple milestones that I'll call out that happened this week within bulk, right? So for the first time in 25 years, you are co-located back in the corporate business center. You had been in one of our kind of satellite buildings. So that's kind of neat. As we've moved some things around, we've had the opportunity to welcome bulk back to the building. So welcome back.
Thank you.
And then I think I'd be remiss if I didn't recognize, because we don't have a lot of these folks, a 40-year associate this week, Jill Barlament, who's one of our office associates in bulk. So we'll make sure Jill gets to see this and get the recognition. But yesterday was her 40th anniversary. We celebrated it today with a nice little gathering down in the new bulk area in the building. And so a couple of neat things going on.
It was awesome. Yeah, both those things. So you know, on the heels of the other thing we talked about today, as we recognized Jill's 40th, was just a couple years ago. Jill was instrumental in identifying and helping us recognize bulk's 50th anniversary as part of Schneider's business. You know, starting in, I think it was 1969. So just a couple years a couple years ago, we celebrated that. But you're right, Todd. I mean, the integration with Schneider bulk back in this corporate facility is really significant. And what's really relevant to me is when we look at our competitive set broadly, as Schneider. We think about a number of other big names, and we're unique in the space of having a bulk business. And I think that's pretty exciting. I think that's also something that we bring to our customers and can differentiate there is we have this offering as well, and it's all under the Schneider umbrella. And yeah, kudos to Jill because she does a tremendous job, and it was a lot of fun recognizing 40 years.
Yeah, awesome. All right, so you ready for some questions?
Sure.
Okay, let's go. As soon as Tammy pops some up here, we'll get after it. So we've heard about intermodal doubling in size in the next few years. How do you think about that from a bulk perspective? Yeah. What does growth look like?
Yeah, I'd love to double our bulk intermodal just the same, and so we want to get aggressive there. We're unique in that offering, and really in the industry, having that bulk intermodal capability. And I think a lot of it stems from having such a large dry box intermodal business and the rail relationships and the efficiencies that come along with that. It gives us the capability to execute that well on the bulk side. I think we've got some significant upside there. The difference with on the bulk side with intermodal is generally all of our customers, or a good percentage of our customers, ship on tank car. If they have high volumes, they ship in tank car, and they also ship in trucks. So to find the niche with bulk intermodal, we've got to find those tweener volumes that work where it's not big enough where I'm going to send it all on the rail car, but it's not small enough where I never need to be concerned. And we've seen that grow over time here. I think in particular as companies become more concerned, more let's say aware of their environmental impact and think about the carbon impact of moving to intermodal where they can, it makes sense. Obviously from a driver perspective, it creates more local, more frequent time at home positions in the intermodal space. That's attractive on both sides.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned this in your opening comments, so I'm just going to kind of build that question out and say, those three components that you talked about, the network business, the intermodal business, and the dedicated business, we're committed to all three of those.
Absolutely.
And from a growth standpoint, we're open for business, right? I mean, yes. we really look at all three of those aspects of the business as opportunities to grow.
That's right. Yeah.
All right. Next question here comes from Robert Larrabee, joining us from Fultonville, New York, which is near home for Bob. Can we look at changing our primary fuel vendor? PFJ is not providing the support it has promised. In the last month, I've been unable to get a shower at Pilot Flying J location. I was parked at least 8 times. They can't seem to clean showers overnight, and their stores in general are becoming more disgusting. I've contacted their customer service repeatedly and get the same answer that they will take it up with the location. In addition, their Wi-Fi is becoming less useful, and I can't find a way to contact anyone about that issue specifically. Really wish we would switch to Love's, as they don't reserve up to half of their lot, and their stores are much cleaner on average than either PFJ or TA. All right, so I'm going to make some comments first, Jason, and then I'll let you make some. So Bob, you are going to see a buzz video that was shot today with Vice President of Pilot Flying J, individual by the name of Steve Miller. So Steve comes on along with Lee Whip, and we shoot a buzz. We try to do it once a quarter. I think it's been about 6 months. And so what Steve is talking about in the buzz video is looking for feedback from our drivers in regards to things like you're talking about here. So we're going to put out a driver survey link along with the buzz video to get some feedback that will go directly back to Pilot. The other thing Steve talks about is a significant investment that Pilot will be making in upgrading facilities. And so I think it's really important that we get them feedback consistent or congruent with what your experience is, because there may be some others who say, hey, I have a pretty good experience. So be on the lookout for that. The other thing I'm going to do, Bob, just because you and I have a long-standing relationship and you've been here for a while, is I'm going to coordinate a discussion between you and Steve directly, because he likes to do that. And so that way we can kind of talk about Wi-Fi and we can deal with some of the other issues you have. So kind of stay tuned, Vicki, if you can capture that as kind of a follow-up. Bob, you and I will talk about it and we'll coordinate something with Steve. All right. So any comments on, feedback you get as it relates to Pilot Flying J versus the others? I will tell you, Bob, your feedback is a bit more dire than what I typically get. I will get feedback on specific locations, but generally speaking, I think more favorable feedback than what you just shared.
I have a lot to add there, Todd, but I think the feedback is important, it's valuable, and I think no question that our connections with Pilot Flying J will be heard and it will be addressed.
Yeah, and then the other thing, if you fill the survey out, they're going to give you some loyalty points.
There you go.
So free is good, right? So take time to fill that out. How much extra training is involved to be a bulk driver?
Yeah, speak to this. Generally speaking, our experienced drivers that come in, our introductory bulk training is about 2 weeks in length. So that's maybe a handful of days, maybe a week longer. So
is that experience in any type of offering, or
yes.
is that specific to bulk experiences?
In any type of offering. So really what happens is really the extension and training. It's an extra about 2 weeks, week and a half to 2 weeks of bulk specific training. And so there is an element of differentiated driving training. Certainly driving a tank is a little bit different. Our bulk drivers know that. There's something called the surge, which I've had the opportunity to experience a few times. It can be a little scary. But then there's also the impact of the slosh in the tank left and right, and just being really extra cautious in where those tandems are and how I'm taking turns. So there's more to it than that. I mean, I'm not the professional, but there's driving. But most of the extra training is focused on loading and unloading and understanding how to operate the equipment as it relates to, again, the customer side or the consignee side. So that's where we spend, the majority of the time.
Okay, now how about the inexperienced side? If I came in as an inexperienced driver, how much time would I be spending?
Inexperience is going to be about twice that. So I think about 2 weeks or a little less experience, about 4 weeks or a little less for an inexperienced driver. It's just more time driving and about the same amount of time, maybe slightly more in terms of the bulk loading and unloading. That's generally pretty similar.
Okay, good. Thank you. So any particular location or geography where you see a need for more bulk drivers in the network, or how do you think about that? Or it's kind of like, boy, we'll take them anywhere.
We're pretty open. Yeah, and I think we're unique in that sense. It's something I didn't talk about with the industry, but there are very few, let's say, national bulk carriers in the market. There's a handful of large bulk carriers, maybe let's say 7, 8, 10. And then it gets really small really fast. So there's very few that are national as we are. And so obviously we hire in a lot of locations. We're concentrated, I'd say east of the Mississippi. We think of the square between Chicago, the Gulf, Houston, New Orleans, over to Savannah, up to the northeast and across through Pittsburgh. That's kind of our the primary operating area. But we've got operations on the West Coast. We've got operations in California. We've got operations in Utah and otherwise, especially as we've grown dedicated, that's created even more.
Yeah. So my comments of earlier of we're open for business is we're open for business, right? Yeah. So if you're interested, please express that interest and come aboard. Because one of the neat things about this call is because we do it on our Schneider Truck Driving Jobs Facebook page, we have candidates that are part of this as well. So.
That's great. And I'll just add on to that because I think it is a great forum and opportunity. I talked about Schneider being the only really large carrier with a bulk arm. The other thing I think is attractive there, if I'm a candidate thinking about where I want to go, and I think I'm interested in bulk, and I get into it, and I can do it for a year or two, however long, and I change, and I want to transition. Well, I can go into Schneider Intermodal, I can go into van, I can do something different. So it's all under that Schneider umbrella, and that's, again, a little bit unique.
Yeah, that broad portfolio of services clearly works to our advantage. All right, so next question comes from Mal. Why did the MPG goal for VTL dedicated go from 6.7 MPG in third quarter to 7 miles per gallon in fourth quarter? So Mal, what I don't know is, based on your commentary, what VTL dedicated accounts you're talking about. Did your tractor change from Q3 to Q4? So I'm going to capture it as a follow-up. I will do some follow-up outside of this venue to either get in contact with you or your operations team to get a better understanding of what might be driving that particular change, because there obviously must be some nuance associated with why it would have gone up from Q3 to Q4. That is not typical. So more to come as a part of the follow-up. How about the average age of your bulk fleet? I think there's some good news.
Good news story. Yeah, we have right now we're sitting, Todd, with the lowest age of fleet, certainly that I've experienced in my tenure in bulk. So on average, we hit 24 months. So we have the newest fleet. It ebbs and flows month over month, but generally speaking, that's about where we stand, which I feel pretty good about.
Yeah, it's interesting because when I started here, bulk was celebrating their 16th anniversary. So, I've been here now for what will be their 37 years of their 53 years next year. And I think the average age of fleet back in 1985 was probably closer to 70 months, versus 24 months. So, clearly we have come a long way since I started, and since we purchased Campo Transport, which was how bulk came to be at Schneider. Can you talk about any new business bulk has picked up? Again, we don't like to get into a lot of specifics, but maybe at a high level.
Yeah, I talk about so with for example, I talk about the food grade space. One of our customers is Oatly, that does oat milk, and we've grown that business with them. That's been a nice add, good relationship. But more so, I would focus on two areas, and this is a business strategy, but I think it's also good for our fleet and in the long term. Is growing dedicated, and we've grown in the bulk space. What we don't see is 50 truck fleets or 60 truck. What we see is smaller. It's 5 trucks here, and it's generally based on the size of those customers. So that's been nice because it's twofold. It's about growing dedicated, and then it's also about customer diversification, which is a big deal in different industries. So what we've been able to grow into, I talk about food, we talk about resins or inputs to plastics, certainly chemicals, and even on the dedicated side, getting into different chemicals that we might not have been willing to haul in the network side. Now we can grow and get in there, and all those differences, that just spills, we use the word a lot, resiliency. And it says as the markets ebb and flow, as customers ebb and flow, the more diversification I have, the more consistent results we have, the more consistent freight we have.
Yeah, because I think it's fair to say historically, we were doing liquid chemicals that go into the manufacturing process.
That was it. Right.
Yeah, and so to see that diversification is really kind of neat.
Yeah, we've grown. We're hauling water. There's another example.
Yeah, exactly.
So another one that's unique, and what that also does is it creates a differentiated driving positions in that there's a lot of work where I'm loading or unloading, and again, it's all about what do I really like to do? Do I want to drive most of the day, all day, or do I like spending a fair percentage of my time outside the cab? That can be really attractive to the right individuals. And we have other business where it's a loaded tank, but it's really drop and hook on both ends, and so I'm just driving it, and that's my desire. So it's about trying.
Yeah, I'll tell you, some of my favorite pictures on social media is that Nestle water operation up in Maine during the fall when the colors are blooming. You get some really great pictures up there. Yep. All right, this comes from Levi Cody Allen. Levi was able to make it to Green Bay and spend time with me in my office last week. So Levi, thanks for being with us tonight, and thanks for stopping in last week when you were here. Are the trucks spec'd differently for bulk, and how?
Yeah, just a little bit, and we can probably phone a friend and ask the maintenance experts on how are the transmissions a little different, or how.
I thought you were a maintenance guy. It's been a while.
But they are different in that one of the biggest differences if you compare it to what does a van tractor look like versus a bulk tractor is there's a big difference in what we can get from aerodynamics in the tank, and it's really based around the shape of the tank and the gap between the truck and the tank, that we don't see those fairings that come up right to the tank because the nature of the tank is just less aerodynamic. So that's maybe something that's pretty simple, but you say, why do they look different? It's because you can't really get the aerodynamic benefit that you can with a van. And of course, probably one of the other biggest differences is the tank trucks come with a pump and compressor and all the components, hose rack and that sort of thing that are just about executing the business. But generally speaking, I mean, inside the cab, engine-wise, sometimes there's a little bit different spec, but broadly speaking, it's the same. We're doing the same thing as it relates to trying to maximize driver comfort items in the truck and match what we're doing across the different businesses.
And I think, if I'm not mistaken, through the latest round of tractor upgrades, are we out of the tag axle business?
Yes.
Yeah.
I should. Yeah. So I don't know if I can say that. I think we sold the last one.
Yeah.
Todd. So yeah, we're out of the tag axles,
Okay.
and we're also just earlier this year we transitioned to our last manual out, so we're 100% automated as well.
Okay.
Across our business.
Awesome. This comes from David Trump, Senior. Could we end up seeing bulk intermodal coming to the Chambersburg rail? So David's one of our intermodal drivers out of Chambersburg.
Yeah, potentially. And it really just depends on the customer interest, and if we were to find a customer in that market or a consignee in that market where that would make sense. What we do see on the bulk side is quite often our drays are a little bit longer on average, and so that might cause us to say, hey, we're going to continue to use Jersey, for example, and kind of see what that difference is. But certainly would be in the cards. And when we talked about growth earlier, I'd love to be pushing forward and opening more ramps, because that means the business is growing.
Absolutely. All right, this comes from Hayden Bouquet. Jason, any chance Crystal Clean trucks can get an aero kit on our trucks? It would really help our MPG. So it sounds like a specific request from the bulk.
Yeah, I think this might be one of our bulk accounts where, again, maybe this is a little unique to Schneider, but one that periodically they haul some tanks, but they also haul a lot of vans in the business. And the bulk is actually what's loaded in the back in terms of totes and otherwise, and a fair amount of connection there. So that's certainly something we'll look at. I'll take that away and see what we can do there with.
Okay, so everything.
Let's make a note on that.
Yeah, Vicky will send you a list of every follow-up. You won't have to follow up on all of them, but that one you're going to follow up on. All right.
That's great. Thanks, Hayden.
Yeah. All right, so we have a series of call-outs. So first time tonight. Happy holidays from Eric Epler. Thank you, Eric. Michael Ritz says hello from Angola, Indiana. Michael Bays is at home in Geronimo, Oklahoma. Hi, Michael. Brian Sirkew, good evening, everyone. Brian, thanks for being with us. Happy birthday sometime this week, right? A couple days ago, maybe yesterday. So happy birthday to you. Kurt Ditto says hello from Appleton. So Kurt, you're back up here. Let me know if you're going to be in Green Bay. We'll sit down and talk. We missed each other last week. David Trump Sr., hello, Todd from Chambersburg. The new inexperienced intermodal training school. Yeah. So we started doing some of that work there. Bob Hamray is howdy ho from Breezewood, Pennsylvania. Roderick Del Rando, good evening from the Flying J in Virginia. Tyler Schneider says longtime listener, first time caller, no questions, just dropping a note to say hi to Jason. So hi,
awesome.
Jason.
Thanks, Tyler.
Tyler.
Call Tyler out. Tyler, when I talked about earlier the complexity of bulk, but we got the resources to support. Tyler's at the tip of the spear there with our team that is the support line for our environmental health and safety group that they handle when there's a contingency, when there's a question, when there's an issue, 24/7. We got a line, and he's one of our just a great team member. So anyway, got to recognize Tyler.
Awesome. And then Hayden, who just asked a question. Hey, Todd, I'm on the Crystal Clean account, about to celebrate my 2nd anniversary. So happy anniversary. Before we get to the next question, one of the things that I forgot to talk about in your intro, Jason, and it just as we were doing the call-outs reminded me, is last week was Veterans Day. And Jason is a military veteran, so thank you for your service. And certainly everyone else who's on the call this evening that has spent time in the military, I want to thank you for your service and recognize what you've done for our country. I know we had sent out some little trinkets on behalf of the organization, but certainly while I have an audience and a military veteran here, and we've got another one sitting in the back of the room, a couple actually, Robert Soto, and then Nicole Garcia. So Marine, Army, and you were Army, right? So, you know, Robert.
Got Robert beat out here.
Yeah, well, and he's too far back. He doesn't get to comment. So, again, thank you to all of our veterans. This comes from Noah Carlson. Well, here, look at that. Hi, Todd. With it being Veterans Week month, will you please explain Schneider's amazing benefit for current service members in the National Guard and Reserve called military augmentation pay? So what augmentation pay is that if someone is called up and they are serving their duty, you know, active reserve, and the pay from the military is not congruent with what they earn from a Schneider perspective, we augment that pay. And so we do, you know, pay equalization, if you will, from a military benefit standpoint. So it is a great benefit for our service members. There are a number of people who kind of fall into that category that get that benefit, but certainly one of the things we're very proud of in providing to our military veterans. Next question comes from Juan Carlos Gonzalez. I have a hazmat, a TWIC card, a passport. I'm doing over-the-road van right now. How different is it when it comes to pay?
It depends. No.
Yeah.
That's not to run away from that question, but Juan Carlos, his question outlined is he's got most of them knocked out.
Yeah.
For bulk. So we'd say, hey, I'd want you to get a tanker endorsement, but when we look at hazmat, TWIC, passport, he would have, you know, so much of it knocked out to be extremely productive. We actually, the passport is relevant because we do on the bulk side run deliveries into Canada with our U.S. based drivers that go, and so he could, you know, kind of fit right into that as well. So all those certifications, without, you know, try to be as direct as I can to say, the more certifications that our bulk drivers have, the more greater their earnings potential, generally speaking. So he's got a lot of them checked off.
Yeah, and I would add, just again, generally speaking, because of some of the complexity that Jason talked about, on balance, you know, our bulk driver will make more than a van driver of the same tenure. And that's just due to the complexity that's associated with the bulk work. And so we recognize that, and there's a bit more pay associated with that. Next question, been a lot of attention on the ports of Los Angeles. One of the causes we have heard is the driver shortage. Has the driver shortage gotten worse? You know, it's interesting because, first of all, I would tell you the attention on the ports of Los Angeles, you know, it's starting to get the attention of the media, of politicians and the like. And so some of the things you hear about the supply chain in those particular communication vehicles aren't necessarily as accurate as we might like them to be, being supply chain people. So there's a whole host of issues associated with the backlog of cargo out in Los Angeles. What we're seeing is that there are some people who are now bypassing that, going through, you know, the Panama Canal and going out to one of the eastern ports to kind of get away from that congestion. And so they could be at a port in Florida or in Savannah, you know, New York, New Jersey. And that's a way to kind of maneuver. You pay a bit more of a fee to get through the Panama Canal, but boy, your product isn't going to be sitting out in the ocean either. They may move up the coast to Northern California or up to Seattle. So there are some options, but what we hear about is kind of Los Angeles. It's not just drivers that are implications. There are, how do you get the cargo off the ship? And so that backlog doesn't leave, because as you get the next ship unloaded, there might be another one coming in. And then there's chassis. And so you have to have chassis to put the containers on once they are getting ready to ground them. And so you've got some staffing issues, you've got container issues, you've got chassis issues, and then is there driver implications? Absolutely. Everything from you sit in line a lot longer right now because of the backlog, and then you add to that some of the constraints we see at the driver level, and you have kind of this perfect storm. But it's not just the driver shortage, and sometimes I think that's kind of a convenient way for people to explain it. It's a much broader issue.
Yeah, I know you hit it on a lot of factors as it relates to the port, and then once I get it off the port, where does it go? I generally have to de-stuff that container and put it in. In many cases, I'm transloading or put it into a domestic box. But what I'm optimistic about, and you kind of covered it, is hey, law of economics, supply demand, people figure it out, right? And we're going to figure out how to go to use different ports, use different alternatives. But I'm also optimistic about is that this is a time when you talk about the lines at the port where we're going to drive greater visibility to delays that our drivers face on an ongoing basis and get more change from our customers, more change through the supply chain to increase the velocity of our trucks and equipment, because that's ultimately, there's a lot of opportunity there. And if we can get better there, we get better with the utilization of our equipment, utilization of our drivers' time, that's going to speed things up.
Yeah, absolutely. Good. Any bulk products we're not currently hauling that you see as areas of growth, or do you feel pretty good about the diversification?
Yeah, it's a good question. We're pretty well, I think we're pretty well covered. There are certainly areas that, let's say, products that we're not hauling, or maybe even types of trailers that we don't do a lot of. We don't do a lot in the compressed gas space, for example, when you think of ammonia or other propane, other products like that. And that certainly is an area of opportunity. We're certainly pursuing those areas, whether it's with our equipment or in some cases with customer equipment. But again, I go back and kind of compliment Tyler and team. I feel really good about our training team in total. I mean, I think we've got some of the best trainers in the business, I'm sure. And many times you say it's just another commodity and it's just another type of trailer. We'll figure it out. We work through the training. We de-risk and execute for the customer. So anything's on the table. But there's not really, boy, this sticks out as a way to go for us. Again, I would repeat that I've been excited about the positive trend in the food grade space, because I think that was a vertical, so to speak, or a part of the industry that we weren't playing very heavily in, and it provides that resiliency, diversification for the future. Food's going to be around.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is a question, I'm sure, as it relates to a follow-up to the hurricane. How are things going in reserve?
Getting better. We have a tremendous team there, and it won't surprise you to use that word again, the resiliency of that group and how they weathered that storm. Literally, that was very, very impactful, specific to reserve,
right?
Specific to that area. If you remember seeing some of the flooding and some of the videos where it kind of missed New Orleans just a little bit, but the flooding hit that area significantly. The biggest outcome, the biggest impact for us longer term, I mean, there were associates that were impacted, certainly, and we've worked to take care of them to the best of our ability. But the longer term outcome was power. Power was out, and as part of that, internet was out. And so that really created a longer disruption with our facility there to say, we got to get power up, we got to build a power. But then we're not out of the woods. I can tell you that one of my key leaders on my team, Carmen, is there this week on site with the group. We've got a little more facility work to do in terms of redoing the floor and fixing the flooding. We're going to outfit that facility with new furniture, so it'll be one of the first offices this year to get new furniture. So we're going to take care of the group, but yeah, they're not quite out of the woods, but just amazed at the just how that team pulled through and just worked through just a lot of hardship and continue to deliver to our customers, continue to get and support our drivers, our office staff, and our drivers getting out and delivering.
Yeah, and as they were working through kind of getting back up and running, your other facilities really provided support as well, right? And so it was really, from my perspective, kind of watching and being a part of the the recovery team, it was a real team effort. And so you got to feel great about that from a leadership standpoint to be able to see how your entire group rallied around the folks.
It's good. So we're going to get, we're going to get better there. And I always look back and use every one of these as a learning opportunity.
Oh, absolutely.
Every storm, and this one, there's some things we can look back and say, could we have done this different? Could we have done this different? But we have a playbook, and we'll take care of our team.
All right, so this comes from Peter Bennett. This is a benefits-related question. Will Schneider contribute to the new HSA? So the way an HSA works is that is a personal account, right? So what we are doing is we are offering an HRA, which Schneider will contribute to, and an HSA, which is an account you contribute to. The difference between them is that the HSA dollars will follow you year after year after year. So it's not a use it or lose it type of situation that you have if you're on the flex spend side or the dependent care side, of pre-tax dollars. Those you need to use within a prescribed period of time. That's not the case for the HSA. So the recommendation that we made last month when Martha was here is look at the benefits material that we provided. There's a one-pager that kind of compares HRA to HSA, and then we also have a video that talks about what may work best for your situation. But Schneider does not contribute to the HSA. The Schneider contribution is to the HRA. I don't know if you have any other comments.
Oh, you got it. I'll leave it there, Tom.
All right, good. All right, this comes from Joshua Glassburn. Any new OCs planned in the near future? Well, depending on your definition of near, if it's consistent with mine, the answer is no. So, we will clearly continue to provide, upgrades to our existing facilities. We have a plan every year to do that. We're in the process of upgrading Atlanta right now, not happening as quickly as we would like because we've had to work through some permitting issues and some other things. But I don't know, from your perspective, anything you want to add there on the facility front?
Nothing. No, I would answer it the same. Nothing else that I'm aware of in the near term. But I think we'll continue to pursue upgrades to our existing facilities. You talked about Atlanta. It's been a fair amount of time coming, and we're working on it, and that will be a big impact. But I think it's about looking forward as we just get back, through what has been a fairly challenging time for a lot of folks. Get to the longer term strategy. We'll see where the business takes us. And I know we'll build a facility where we need it. I know that.
Yeah, absolutely. This comes from Mike Wester. Mike, hey, thanks for being with us. Haven't had the opportunity to talk to you recently, so glad you're able to make it. Mike is based out of New Jersey with our intermodal team. Awesome. Will intermodal ever get into the reefer market? It's a great question, Mike. Obviously, I don't work in intermodal. Jason is very familiar with bulk intermodal. I don't know if you have any insights, but I always say, hey, listen, in an environment like Schneider, never say never, right? So if an opportunity presents itself into, the movement of cold goods, via the train, that would be something I think we would certainly explore. It really has to lead to a profitable opportunity for us. But I don't think there's anything that I know of in kind of the near term that would suggest that. But we certainly wouldn't not look at it.
Right. With the right opportunity and the right density in a business. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. David Landis, any future in gas hauling? So we've kind of been on again, off again with fuel over the course of time with bulk. So
yeah, we've done some. I think the last round where we did some gas hauling was more of a contingency support. It was related to a pipeline, right? A pipeline being down, and so we kind of came in from a contingency perspective. But through my lens, at least as I've observed it, there are some pretty solid, long-term competitors in that gas business, and I used the word density earlier. It's all about density in that gas hauling space, where I have the right number of stations, the right density for the trucks to keep moving, and I think it's a fairly competitive market, and it's been fairly unique to outseat maybe some of those competitors. So never say never, but the next contingency could come up. But I think we see enough opportunity within, again, chemicals and food that we'll continue down that path.
Yeah. All right, this comes from Joseph Morning Jr. Joe was up here last week. He made his debut on a buzz, so he shot a buzz with us. He lives out in California. So as he says, just going to throw this out there, don't know how, but we need more bulk positions in California, and he is willing to write letters to Santa if he has to.
Awesome, love it. Yeah, we do. I want to make more bulk positions.
All right, so we're on the same sheet of music there, Joe.
We're working on it. Yeah, absolutely.
Good. All right, some more shout outs. David Landis, good evening from the Savannah OC, so down in the bulk world. Mike Marsh, by the way, good evening from Williams, Iowa at the Flying Hook. Hi, Mike, headed back to Wisconsin, I would imagine. Ben Starbuck, Ben's one of our training engineers. Hello, guys, from the Joanne, DC. Marty Stetchner says, hey, Todd, Tammy, and the rest. Marty, I hear you're on the mend, so get well soon. Alan Denton says, hello from the Pennsylvania Home Depot site delivery account. Hi, Alan. Joseph Morning, who just asked the question. Hello, Todd and team. Checking in from the Dick's Sporting Goods, DC. And Jenna Metcalf says, hello, team from Atlanta. So hello to all of you. Thanks for being with us this evening. Next question comes from Marcus. Are we going to put a tractor wash in Carlisle? I'm kidding. Marcus normally asks that question. So now whenever I see Marcus's name, I ask it for him. Because I told him he didn't have to ask anymore. I'd let him know when we were going to put one in Carlisle. So just teasing you, Marcus. Would Schneider take a look at the current passenger or rider program and consider dropping the riders down to 5? It's currently 10 years old for immediate family members like other carriers are doing. So quickly, I would just say I'm not really familiar with what other carriers are doing, but certainly if there seems to be an opportunity, we think it's good for family members to experience what dad is doing out there, right? And so I don't know if you've heard anything about our passenger program. I haven't really kind of stuck my nose in that recently.
No, I haven't. But I think it's one where I would be confident that we have the right folks looking at it and trying to evaluate, what we think is best for the organization and protecting the organization as well as trying to be as flexible as we can for those, those driving associates that want to have passengers, want to have family. So,
so my commitment, Marcus, is I will ask those that look at that and see if they're seeing any trends that might suggest we could lower the age, and get you the answer. And if the answer is yes, great. If the answer is no, I'll tell you why it's no. All right. Thanks for the question. This comes from Edwin. When are we getting new trucks? So if you want to talk about, we've added a significant number of trucks. We are at a period of time right now where we're seeing, kind of a delay as you get into some of the component part issues and stuff. But maybe talk about kind of what the truck plan looks like between now and the end of the year, and then as we move into the early part of next year.
Yeah, we have. So I think generally speaking, you hit it on the head, Todd. Not dissimilar from you read the news and talk about automotive manufacturing and automotive parts. What's happening there? It's no different with our trucks. So there's component shortages. We hear a lot about semiconductors or chips, but it's a lot of other things. It's it's brakes, it's lights, it's whatever else. So a lot of shortages are starting to pile up and then impact overall production. So where we sit today, I think I could represent our bulk business, and I think a little bit on the other businesses. We do expect to see a limited number of trucks continue to trickle in through the end of the year. We certainly expect to see, what we have is probably some carryover of stuff we should have received this year that we're going to receive in the first part, probably the first, let's say 2 to 3 months of 22. And then we're right back on track with our let's say, regular schedule of maintaining our age of fleet. And so you'd be optimistic that then the manufacturer will be able to pick up after Q1 and kind of keep us back on track. But we are going to see and feel maybe a little bit of a lull. But like I talked earlier about our age of fleet, fortunately we were able to maybe get ahead of it a little bit earlier this year.
The good news is because we have worked with these vendors for a number of years, because we purchased a number of trucks, we are positioned really well with them. And so we have some advantages in that space because of our size, whereby, a smaller carrier on a percentage basis is getting impacted much more significantly than we are. And we have been able to make a nice dent in our age of fleet. And so, this kind of lag or lull we'll see here for the next, 6 to 8 weeks. We can live with that. And it's because we understand what's going on in the environment. This comes from Kevin Coacher. Kevin's one of our TEs. Hey, Kevin, thanks for being with us. Good evening, Todd, Jason, and team. It seems that driver policy of last have been geared towards training, retaining, and maintaining new drivers. What policies are Shire looking at to benefit experienced drivers, such as anniversary bonuses, 10-year, 20-year tenure, or milestone bonuses such as 1,000,000 miles of safe driving? Thanks for everything, Todd, and good luck in retirement. So I'll start with the end of that and remind people that I'm not retiring just yet. So I'm here till March. You got to put up with me until then, but thank you for the well wishes, Kevin. Jason, you want to kind of talk about how we, clearly we are always hiring.
Yes.
And as we're hiring, the way we think about the whole context of this is we want to attract and retain.
Okay.
So, those two things work hand in hand, but any thoughts you can share in the more of the retention side, which is what
Sure.
Kevin's getting.
Sure. Well, I think the answer is we're always looking at what can we do differently? How can we do, and we don't just look internally, we look externally. We had the question earlier about the rider policy. What are competitors doing? What are some good ideas that we could try to bring in? And historically, what we've tried to do with our pay design is make sure we're rewarding tenure in that pay design. That obviously, the longer I'm here, the more experience I have. Not only am I likely more productive because I got this down and I'm getting really good at it, but my pay rate is higher because I have that tenure. Otherwise, from a retention piece, that does remain in the cards to look at, hey, what would we do different on a tenure incentive, if you will, and so continue to look at that and kind of pursue different opportunities. It's all about the whole picture, and you're right, Todd. We certainly want to attract new folks, but most importantly, and just as important, maybe more, is want to retain.
Yeah, and I'm going to add to that, and for those that are regulars, you hear me say this all the time, is from a driver pay perspective in the attract and retain space, we are always looking at how we can enhance what we currently have. We have a driver pay team that meets 52 weeks a year to talk about these very things. And the one thing you have to be mindful of as you're doing that is, what's the landscape, right? So what's the competitive market suggesting? Because we want to be positioned in a very competitive space, because we don't want to lose people on the attraction side. We don't want to lose people on the retention side. But there is a bit of a balancing act that you have to go through. And so we will continue to look at it and determine what makes the most sense for us moving forward. This comes from Ellen Knutson. Will you ever consider adding a pet rider policy? And so here's what I would tell you, Ellen, is we allow pets for our teams. So there is a pet policy we have for teams. We do not allow them for solo drivers. And consistent with what we've been talking about, we look at those things. and assess what makes sense for us. And at this point, what we've assessed is it's okay for teams and it's not okay for solos. So that's where we're at right now. And, we'll continue to keep people informed as to whether something changes in that space or not. But I would tell you it is more likely not to change than it is to change.
Concur. Yep.
Okay. This comes from Roderick Del Randall out of the West Memphis, Arkansas Operating Center. When are we going to replace all these old trailers? I get bad ones a lot. I'm an OTR driver. So, and we talked about tractor age of fleet. Want to talk about kind of the trailer plan?
Yeah, I try to speak to the van trailers. I don't know that it's crazy dissimilar from our bulk tanks, although we got a lot of old bulk tanks because they last a long time.
They last a lot longer.
We have to reface them a lot and try to keep them looking nice, but the barrel themselves last a long time. We talked about my tenure, and sometimes I say that when I took the role in bulk a number of years ago, we still had most of the, again, a lot of the tankers I had when I was working in Gary in the shop, right?
Yeah.
The same one, still around 15, 20 years later. But as it relates to the trailer replacement, same plan here. I would say there's no change in our efforts to try to reduce the age of fleet with trailers, and I can't speak specific to the van age of fleet, but what I can speak specifically to is we do anticipate and probably have experienced a little bit the same kind of impact of production that you see with trucks. It's kind of the same with trailers, and so I know that we're working hard to get new ones in and manage the age of fleet appropriately. But certainly, I know our maintenance team is also standing by if we have some that need to repair. The best thing to talk to our existing driver associates to do is, hey, you got to, when you report it, I'm confident that our maintenance team gets after it. So the worst thing we could do is not report it, and then it sits for the next individual that comes to get something with an issue. So I never miss that opportunity to try to help.
What's interesting is for those drivers that have been here for an extended period of time, you'll know what I'm talking about. But when we started what is known as intermodal today, and we called it truck rail at the time. So they're celebrating their 30th anniversary this year. So this goes back to 1991, and having been a part of that startup team, we were doing trailers on flat cars at the time. So we didn't do containers and chassis until the 2000s. And you talk about a beat up trailer fleet, because they were interchangeable, right? We'd lift them, we'd put them on the trailer on flat car, we'd move them via the rail, and then we might move them via truck after that. And our average age of fleet was considerably more than it is now. And so if you've been here a long time, I think you would agree that we are in much better shape from a trailer condition standpoint than we were back in those days. And so it's always relative, right?
Really
to
is.
What your perspective and experience is.
Not meant to be a knock on the railroads, Todd, but when I started in maintenance, to your point with truck rail, we repaired a lot of holes in roofs.
Yes, exactly.
We had a full-time team doing holes but it's just based on the nature of taking those things on and off the train. It just happens, right?
Right.
But we had that went way down when we got the containers with different lift mechanisms.
Yeah, because the pin goes
The
in
lift points were
to the hole, and the lift point is completely different. So good stuff. Will we be running extra teams during the holidays this year? Simply put, the answer is yes, as long as we can identify individuals who are interested in getting in the truck together and running. We have some bonuses available to drivers that are willing to do that. We also have bonuses available to existing teams to run kind of through the holidays. So a series of programs out there. If you are interested, please check with your DTL. They'll get you in touch with the right people to see if we can't get you teaming between now and the end of the year. All right. So we have 3 more questions before we wind this up, because we've already been at this for an hour. This comes from Eric Gunther. With the automated gate system, how are things going with getting it to see the dedicated trailers? Any thoughts?
I don't know this one.
Okay,
Well,
so I do.
on the bulk side, you can better
Yeah,
service.
so we are doing a pilot around an automated gate system. And so the objective is to have a reader that as the truck is, getting close to the gate, it is reading truck number and trailer number, bumping it up against the system, and if they equal what the system says it should equal, the gate opens automatically. So it's a really neat pilot that we're looking at. We think it will provide time savings. Some of the issues you run into in dedicated, at least through the pilot, is we haven't populated all of those kind of unique trailer types or trailer numbers. And so right now it's working with our orange kind of bands. So just know that those are things that as you continue to build it out, you will build out more and more logic. So I would tell you there are some constraints on the dedicated side if you're hauling something other than an orange van. So more to come. We'll keep people
That makes
posted.
sense, Todd. And we had piloted that, we've been working on that for some time. So I just didn't have a good update on it, but I remember the problem hasn't changed, is that the technology will continue to advance, but it's all about unique equipment. You mentioned dedicated. In some cases, it's customer equipment.
Yes.
That we might not have identified in our system, and that becomes the tension of making sure it's right, making sure, it's all about, keeping our lots, obviously our facility safe, the right truck with the right trailer, and just that logic check is the question.
Yeah, and the new technology is better in the sense that it's not necessarily RFID, so you don't need chips and the like. It's via the camera, just number kind of recognition. And so as that technology continues to advance, we're going to continue to see enhancements. Is it possible for TEs to get multiple truck washes a year versus just the one with a PM? And so, Joe Morning and I were talking about this last week when Joe was up here, because he's one of our TEs. And I think there's merit to that. And so Joe and I talked about the fact that, the TEs take pride in what they're doing. We want the fleet to look good, et cetera. So something that we will explore and determine, what makes the most sense to ensure that we get some additional washes over the course of time. Because, depending on how many miles you run, you might get 1.5 truck washes a year, right? Because of how many miles we can put on between PMs.
Yeah.
Okay. And then this, I guess, would be the last question, golfing in space.
That's that person's username.
Ah.
It's a YouTube.
Okay, so that's a YouTube watcher.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on driverless cars and trucks? All right, so you want to provide some thoughts? I have some thoughts. You want to provide your thoughts?
Why don't you start?
Okay.
I'll follow it up.
Yeah, so what I would tell you is that the technology continues to get better. And so when you think of autonomous vehicles, there are 5 levels to autonomy. And right now, where the industry sits from a car technology standpoint, we're into level 5, not all the way there, but in the truck space, we're well into level 4. Now, having said that, right, the real interesting hurdles you have to get over in driverless is kind of the first and final mile. It's the turns associated with being in potential metropolitan area. And so that's where I think all of the latest technology is looking at, because in many cases, in long straight stretches of interstate, there's a lot of confidence. But you got to continue to enhance that, what I call the first and last mile. And so at least in the near term, I think as you see continuation of what's called kind of autonomous trucks or driverless trucks, is they won't really be driverless, right? There will be, you may not call it a driver, maybe it's a monitor or an operator, but think of the airline industry. Think of the locomotive industry, right? They have autopilot in planes or jets, and they've had it for years. There's still pilots there in case something goes wrong. In a locomotive, and those are running on a rail, right? And they have kind of autopilot again, if you will, but there are still engineers there in the event something goes wrong. And so I think you'll see the same thing in the truck space for certain. Obviously, I know more about the truck space than I do about the car space, just given the industry we work in. I don't spend a lot of time looking at the car stuff, but they're leveraging some of the technology in the car space. So those would be my comments.
Yeah, I think that's on track. It's interesting you went to the plane, because that's the first thing I thought when folks think about this new technology and think about this new technology. I think of back to the military example, 25 years ago, whether it was in the helicopters I was in or flying in I think it was a C-17 formation. They flew formation on autopilot together, and that's a long time ago. Right?
Yeah.
But now, this technology continues to get better. I'm most excited about it in the near term, not as driverless, but in this automated, enhancements that are happening that really affect and improve the quality of experience for the driver, and take off some pressure, take off other distractions. I think that's the real near term benefit is that technology. That's what we're going to see first. But I think you're right. Full time, let's say true driverless, in at least through my lens, is just where you outlined. It's on really longer haul, few distractions, few potential issues in the near term. The technology will continue to come, but like you said, Todd, there's a driver in there clearly in the first and last mile.
Well, I can say with confidence, I don't think you'll see an autonomous or driverless truck before Todd Jaden retires. So, and just as a reminder, that's March of 2022. So I'm not going to speak beyond that. We've got a new bulk leader at the Gary Operating Center. So you want to introduce him to the group?
Excited for Bob Burns to move over to the bulk side. He only has to take about 10 steps.
Exactly.
His desk, because he's been an existing leader in the Gary Operating Center for a number of years, and working with John Girth there. And Bob just has great experience in operations with customers and in the dedicated space. So he's jumping in, and we're really excited.
Yeah, he's a high energy guy. He'll bring a little energy to the group down there. So awesome. All right, some last shout outs before we get out of here tonight. Alex Mock says hello from North Carolina. Hillary Bell. Hey Todd, how are you? I'm good. Viewing from Dallas, Texas. Barney Johnston, howdy y'all. Yeah, Barney, I see you've been working the ports out there. So thank you for being with us, and thank you for helping with that port congestion. And then Terry Wolf says, hi Todd, from Valparaiso, Nebraska. I don't know that I realized there was a Valparaiso, Nebraska. I'm familiar with Valparaiso, Indiana.
Yeah, that's where I was born. So
really? You're a Valpo guy?
Valpo.
Oh, hey, all right. Okay, so that's it. We're going to close with a thank you to Jason for being with us. Appreciate all of your insights and what you had to share about the bulk business. I'll close to the driver group by saying, certainly happy Thanksgiving. I can't believe it's is it next week already? Yeah, it's next week. It's amazing how fast that has come along. We're okay?
Yes.
Okay. I thought we were leaving, in the middle of the comments. All right. So happy Thanksgiving to all of you. We really appreciate you being with us this evening, spending your time with us, and certainly you take care, drive safe, and we'll see you in December, shortly before the Christmas holiday.